1. This story is very hard for me to share as it changed my life forever. Now this story does have some sexual content, so please be advised. As I'm sure most petite 18-year-old girls like myself know, being catcalled is not out of the ordinary. In fact, it happens about every time I go for walks in my city. Everything from honked horns and the occasional, "Hey sexy," shouted out car windows. I have never quite had an experience like this one I am about to share with you. It was about 9 p.m. and my best friend and I, her being 6 feet tall, and myself only being 5'5", were walking to our favorite venue in the heart of my city for some cocktails and cheap food. For context, in recent years, my city has gone downhill fast. The rate of homicides has gone up like crazy, and it seems like muggings, stabbings, and rapes are weekly occurrences. What I'm trying to say is that my city is ghetto as fuck. But I grew up in a much worse area of my province than where this story takes place, so I rarely feel threatened, and I know how to handle myself when I come across sketchy situations. This city is also known for a bit of gang violence, and groups of really intimidating crackheads and drunks like to loiter around downtown. Anyways, my friend and I were walking along and talking about boys or something silly, and I hate to admit it, but I was in my own little world and not really paying too much attention to what was happening around me. Our conversation was abruptly interrupted by two men sitting on a bench shouting, "Whoa, look at that one's ass! You're fucking sexy, honey. Come sit in my lap and I'll give you a present." While I ignored this rude comment, my friend shouted back, "Oh, fuck off, you old pervs. Do you kiss your mother with that mouth?" They didn't say anything more to us, and we continued on our way to the restaurant. I thought that the little kerfuffle with the men had fizzled out. But as we walked on, someone aggressively grabbed my arm from behind and turned me around so I was facing him. I turned around, and it was the same two men from a few minutes before. These men reeked of stale cigarettes and liquor. I was nervous when I saw the men up close, and their meth-scabbed faces and yellow-brown rotty teeth really scared me. I'm assuming they were anywhere from 30s to early 60s. It's hard to tell when drugs have hollowed out someone's face entirely. "What the hell are you doing?" I scowled at the greasy-looking man who had a tightening grip on my arm. "You know, it's very, very dangerous for two lovely girls to be out." When he said this, my friend stupidly said, "Shut the fuck, we can take care of ourselves, just piss off." I think this angered the guys because the man who had his hand around my wrist let me go and said, "Wow, a lot of naughty things have happened to ladies like you out here lately. Wouldn't want anything like that to happen to you two sweet little things." He said it with a sort of half-crooked smile that felt very sinister. With him not holding my arm anymore, I took this opportunity to scurry on as fast as we could away from the lowlifes and continued on our way to the restaurant. I looked behind my shoulder every now and again to make sure we weren't being followed, but they were still behind us. Fuck. We reached the restaurants, and I figured that going inside would deter the men from following us in. And it did. They didn't come in after us. They just simply walked past the window and looked at us as they did. What losers, I thought to myself. After a couple of hours of eating, drinking, and being merry, it was getting pretty late, and we thought it was best for us to head out. I was feeling a little tipsy, and I had forgotten all about our creepy friends we had made earlier. My best friend was to catch the city transit home, and I was going to take advantage of the beautiful night and walk myself home. I waited with her at the bus stop till it arrived. We hugged, and she went on her way. I started back in the direction of my house, which was a 15-minute walk. I walked back the way I came, and turned at a corner, and to my great displeasure, the two assholes from earlier were standing right there. I nearly bumped into them. I was scared now because I was alone, and it was later, darker and less people were out and about. In fact, I couldn't even see someone else other than these two men. It's my tasty little friend," he said in his cold, raspy, perverted voice. He was so close to me that I could smell the liquor on his breath. He snatched my arms up and held them harder than he had done before. I was so scared. I knew that these guys were a lot stronger than me. I always carried 2 knives on me, one in my purse and a switchblade in my bra, in case of situations like this. But he held my hands so hard I couldn't free them to grab either knife. I started yelling for help and telling the guy to let me go, but his buddy put his hands over my mouth and nose so I couldn't breathe. I was pushed up against a wall at this point, by the way, so I couldn't just run. I was really struggling for air when I started getting dizzy. My vision got blurry. And I'm not really sure, but I think I passed out for a second or two. I opened my eyes and I was now laying on the ground, with the bigger of the 2 men sitting on top of me, straddling me with my hands pinned up. Never in my life have I felt so vulnerable. I was tough. This kind of shit wasn't supposed to happen to me. I was so angry that these guys thought they could do that to me, and I started crying out of fear and anger and frustration. Still with the other man's hands still over my mouth. "I'm gonna teach you, you fucking bitch, to respect men. You answer when you're spoken to, you little cunt." The man holding my mouth yelled at me in slurred drunken speak. Just then, he started to feel up my chest and put his hands down my bra. He was groping me and he inevitably felt my knife. I didn't think this could get any worse. He started laughing hysterically. He laughed so hard at me. "What do you think you need this for, baby? You gonna try to slice me up?" He was mocking me now. I was so angry and embarrassed that this was happening to me in the middle of this street. The man sitting on top of me had started to do disgusting sexual things to me that I don't want to go into detail about. I don't really remember what happened after that because I think I blocked it out of my memory. But as he was feeling me, he loosened his hands from me and shifted his weight for a slight moment, and I took this as an opportunity to flail my arms and kick my legs in hopes to hit him. I definitely kicked something, and he let go for a split second and groaned in pain, and I just ran the other way screaming as loud as I could. I was so scared that they would be behind me, but they never did come after me or chase me. They just left. I still thanked the high heavens that my phone had managed to stay in my back pocket throughout the whole ordeal, and I called my big brother sobbing, and I told him I needed him to come get me. He showed up in record time and I jumped in his car as quickly as I possibly could. I told him everything and he was pissed off that these jerks hurt me. I had never seen my brother so furious in my life. My brother lives in a house full of his guy friends, all ages 20 to 25. And they all have my back when I need it. My brother dropped me off at his house and told me to stay inside. His friends went with them and they went to look for the bastards who held me down. He never told me if he found them or not. He doesn't say much about it, but he found my purse laying on the sidewalk where the men attacked me. They stole my wallet and all my money and my other knife. I still don't know how I managed to get away from those 2 men, and I thank the God that I was able to when I did before those guys did even knows what else to me. My stomach hurts every time I think about this encounter. I never did tell my best friend what happened because I don't want her thinking that she could have helped if she were there. I just don't want her to feel scared. I don't walk alone anymore, and I've become sort of a recluse. I stay home, and I'm very scared and paranoid all the time now. What if I see those guys again? Since they stole my wallet, they have my ID. They know my name and my address. I'm terrified they will come back and finish what they started. If you're wondering, I never did call the police. My brother told me not to. I don't really know why, but I trust his judgment. I have since moved in with my brother and his friends because Those guys have my old address. I sincerely hope karma gets these men. 2. When I was a bit younger, I used to have a friend come over every other weekend to play with. This time I had my friend Bree over, and her favorite activity to do was shoot terrible homemade movies with me, so we both promised to make one when she came over. After some playing around, we finally started thinking about the movie, and decided to make a scary movie about a plushie I had got at a random yard sale. It was a llama in a dress with a flower crown, which wasn't that scary to us, but would do. We set up the first scene in my mom's room since she was away. Then began the movie. The opening scene was of me at my job and typing on the computer. Then I stop and feel uncomfortable about the doll, making me walk out of the office and throw away the doll. And that's what happened. Well, except when I threw away the doll, it fell out of the trash, so I kicked it to a nearby corner and my friend over-recorded the scene. We stopped the video and watched it over. With our young minds thinking we did great, we wanted to reshoot the scene again and not mess up. When we went to get the plushie, it wasn't where I kicked it. I thought I might have forgotten that I picked it back up, so looked around. I asked my friend if she had picked it up, but she said she didn't. We walked around the whole house to find it, and even asked my grandpa if he had seen it. But no one knew. I went back to my mom's room where I had already checked a few times, and there it was. The doll was waiting for me on the bed, sitting upright, and had one of its hands on my paranormal book, which I had there for the scene. I turned to call for my friend and she rushed over, but when I turned back I kind of hoped the doll would have disappeared. Sadly, all it did was move its hand from my book. As soon as my friend was next to me, my eyes widened at the fact I knew the doll had moved. I told my friend to run and we both rushed to the playroom, locking ourselves inside and clinging onto each other for comfort. I wish I could say we just stayed in the playroom and fell asleep like the babies we were, but we were too scared to sleep that night. While me and my friend played calming video games, I kept hearing someone calling my nickname, but my friend said she didn't hear anything. I brushed it off as my grandpa's TV, not realizing that it was past midnight, which meant he had already gone to bed and all TVs were off. I finally realized that it wasn't a TV when the voices got louder, and then stopped. Out of nowhere, I heard a voice that sounded like my grandmother yell for me with my real name. I asked my friend if she again heard it, but she said no. This time I had to go or I'd get yelled at by my grandmother. So with a lot of convincing, I got my friend to follow me into my grandpa's room. When we got there, I opened the door slightly to a pitch-black room. I called for my grandma, making her wake up and get upset for waking her up, when she wasn't awake and didn't want me to bother her. Needless to say, when I closed the door, me and my friend bolted to the playroom to lock it. 3. So some background. I am currently a 16-year-old female, but at the time of this story I was about 11. My grandparents had bought a house across from ours, so whenever they came to visit us, they would have a place to stay instead of at a hotel or our house. This is not my only weird experience with this house, but definitely the scariest. Just to add, my neighborhood had literally just been built when we had moved into the house, so they were all perfectly new. Anyways, I remember I was 8 when my grandparents decided to buy the house, but we were going to take a second look around during the open house. Even though I was 8, I noticed the woman was really jittery and eager about telling us the details about the house. I simply brushed it off and ran off doing what any stupid 8-year-old girl would do. So when I was 12, my mom had told me I had to take out the weeds in my grandparents' backyard before they got there. I would have said no, because being alone in the house freaked me out enough already. But there was money involved. I took the job and headed over to the house. I was working for a couple of hours and decided to head inside because it was pretty humid outside, and I forgot to bring water. Entering the house immediately gave me chills. I absolutely hated being alone in the house. It always gave me such an uneasy feeling. I tried to push this feeling aside and mustered up the courage to just head to the fridge and get a glass of water. It was cloudy outside, and I didn't really need to turn on the lights because I was just going to head back outside anyways. Mistake number 1. I was reaching for the glass and I heard something fall in the back room. I felt my body freeze. Even then, I read a lot of scary stories and my mind raced with ideas, trying to give an excuse for the noise. I calmed myself down and went on with my main task. Mistake number 2. I had gotten the water and had pushed the incident out of my mind when I saw movement in the hallway. So this house had a hallway that had 3 large decorative holes in it high above. Kind of like a window, but without the glass. And you would need to be 7 feet tall to actually look through it completely. Now, even though it was dark, I could see rustling through one of these holes. I slowly put the drink down on the table, trying to not make any noise. I then silently walked back to the back door, not taking my eyes off the opening of the hall. To get to the door, you have to pass the hall. Mistake number 3. I slowly passed the hall without incident and bolted to the back door. As soon as I opened the door, the rustling in the hall suddenly became violent, as if whatever it was bounding towards the opening. I slammed the door behind me and ran to the gate, unlatching it as fast as I could and running to the front of the house. I stopped on the sidewalk and tried to catch my breath. I could hear other people's dogs barking and howling as if disturbed. Once I calmed down, I looked back to the house and I fuck you not. When I looked at the front window, this thing was looking at me, lifting the blinds. I saw the most horrific thing I have ever seen. Its eyes were so wide but really far apart, with pupils that almost filled its entire eye. Its skin was almost black, with weird greasy hair sticking out of it in random places. Its hands were almost goat-like. But the most fucked up thing about whatever it was smiling at me. The widest fucking smile I have ever seen. I ran fucking home. Whenever I tell this story to people, I usually refer to the thing as a demon or even the devil itself. Again, I've had many other creepy experiences in this house, but this one fucked me up the most. I still have nightmares about it. Can any of you help me? What is this thing? I won't step foot in the house unless I'm with all of my family. What do I do? 4. Let me start by saying that this story is more paranormal than creepy. I have always believed in the paranormal. Evidence abounds across television and the internet that supports the existence of ghosts. But the story I am about to tell solidifies my personal belief. This happened in May of 2008, in the state of Maine. It was a typical Tuesday night. My girlfriend, we have since married and divorced, was working in the kitchen of the small house that we rented at the time. I was sitting in the living room in my recliner watching TV. Our 2 daughters had just been put to bed. My girlfriend spoke up from the kitchen. "We're out of juice. I have nothing to give the girls in the morning. Can you run to the grocery store and grab some?" I glanced at my watch. It was 8:45 p.m. Our local grocery store closed at 9 p.m. I said yes, if I'd really hurry. I grabbed the keys to our minivan and headed out the door. Our local grocery store was roughly 7 miles away. I sped down the main drag of our town, doing about 60 miles per hour, until I arrived at the store at 8:57 p.m. I ran inside, told the girl behind the checkout counter I knew exactly what I needed, ran down the aisle, grabbed 2 jugs of fruit juice off the shelf, paid for the juice, and strolled out the door. I got back in our minivan and began the drive home. There is a shortcut off the main drag that goes the back way home, which I decided to take. I put my left blinker on. There was no traffic in the oncoming lane, so I made my turn. I know at this point that I should have slowed down, because I was going way too fast to safely negotiate the turn. The 2 jugs of juice in the front seat beside me began to slide forward toward the floor. To keep them from crashing, I shot my right arm out to hold the jugs back. I took my eyes off the road for maybe 1 second. When I looked back at the road, I saw it. There was what I assumed to be a person in the middle of the road. My first thought was, oh shit, I'm about to run somebody over. It took me a half second to realize, however, that my headlights were shining through the person. It was crossing the road, swinging its arms in a motion of a normal person walking. The torso hovered above the pavement. It was missing all of the lower body. Its skin was snow white. The scariest thing was its face. No eyes, just empty sockets, with that snow white skin covering the holes. There was a faint outline of a nose, but no mouth or lips. I could make out a chin, and I could see jawbones on either side of the head. It had shoulder-length black hair that looked greasy. When I reached the dirt shoulder of the road, it disappeared into thin air. This all happened within the span of 2 to 3 seconds. Fear caused the blood to rush out of my head, and I could feel my face changing color, and my body was covered in goosebumps. My hands shook as I continued to drive home. My girlfriend didn't believe me when I told her what had happened. To this day, whatever I saw remains the one and only ghost I have seen in my life. I moved away from the area during the early spring of 2013, but my parents still live near it. I drive by that road at least once, sometimes twice per week. I still get chills to this day whenever I drive past that road. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 4 True Scary Subscriber Stories. I think this is the second one I've done with 4, but it just so happened I was ready to record. I had 4 stories there, so here we are. This did unintentionally turn into a paranormal video for the most part, with the exception of story number 1, which, well, I don't think we need ghosts to make that any more scary. And that was quite horrific all on its own, that one. Massive thanks to everyone who sent their stories in to me, much appreciated, very grateful for that. As usual, if you have a story of your own you'd like to send in, links in the description for the email. New subscriber submissions are always very much appreciated. Sorry about yesterday's video going up so early, that's a complete balls up in my part. I ended up posting it, I think, about 6 in the morning, my time, just after. That's simply because I'd uploaded it, and I'd meant to upload it to be scheduled for later that day, and I'd forgot to hit the schedule thing, so there was that. I also accidentally called one of the people who shared their stories with me by the wrong name when I sent them the email. I really shouldn't do these things when I'm tired. Well, I guess there's no harm done. Seems to have done fairly well regardless. But if you were wondering why there wasn't an upload yesterday, then just look back in your feed. It should be there somewhere. Okie dokie, I think that's about it for now. So, until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.